So we are still doing money magnetism, and we are up to week number 8, and we're still learning the principles of money magnetism. So today's topic is the value of tithing. Tithing is a very challenging spiritual practice, or it's one of the practices that people find the most challenging. The word tithing means 1/10. It comes from the days pre-Jesus, from the time of Moses, where I think they used to count it in sheep. They would allow sheep to go through. So every farmer who had sheep, so the sheep will be going through some, what do you call? Some passageway. Yeah, and 9 sheep would go, and the 10th one would be taken as the sheep for the temple, and then another 9, and then the 10th one for the temple, to kind of, because everything in this world needs to be looked after. And so the concept of tithing is there in Judaism, it's there in Christianity, and I think it's even there in Sikhism, that 1/10 of everything that you earn, you give to the source of your inspiration. And Swami has talked about tithing here, but mostly in form of stories. He's given many, many stories about what happens when you begin to tithe. And giving 10% of your income can seem like, wow, can I really afford it? Because often we find that, when you do your calculations, everything is kind of allocated. That I need this much for food, I need this much for power, this much for rent or mortgage payment, and you count at the bottom and it shows up in a negative number. Right? And then from there we conclude that, well, I really, can't afford to tithe. But based on all the principles that we have learned so far, that we are part of a bigger reality, in order to, and one of the topics we looked at was to live wisely, give, that money is not a fixed reality. Money is a flow of energy. So based on all of that, we've got to kind of also look at it in this way. Where do our talents, our skills, our ability to earn come from? Does it come from what we do ourselves? Or is it something that's a gift that has been given to us? And if we think of it as a gift that has been given to us, like our ability to earn an income is really a gift that has been given to us. We are able to earn because, one, we have health, therefore we can work. We have the skills and the talents, therefore we can do the work that we are doing. And so if you look at it from that perspective, that everything that we have, our skills, our talents, that gives us the ability to earn, is a precious gift given to us by God, then the next question from there is, do we then have a responsibility to give a certain percentage of what we earn to that source where my income comes from? It's a pretty challenging concept. So in the early days of Ananda, so Swami bought, that land, and naturally, there was a mortgage on that land. The mortgage payment had to be made, and it was $1,500 a month. And $1,500 a month, even today, is a lot of money. then would have been a huge sum of money. We're looking at 1970s. And $1,500. So the residents in that spiritual community up at Ananda Village thought let's put Master's principles into work. And the residents at the time there were getting a stipend of $50 a week. $50 a month. $50 a month today is not much. Even then, it wasn't very much. It was barely covering the expenses of the people who were living there. So $50 a month. And so what they thought they would do is they will start tithing from their $50. And 10% of $50 is $5. So $5 doesn't seem like a lot of money, but if you have to give $5 from just the $50 that you were getting, that is quite a lot of money for those people at the time. But they thought, no, let's do it. And there were 50 residents at the time there who were tithing, and 50 residents, $5 each, doesn't make a very big dent in the $1,500 that was required for the mortgage payment. But the principle, and Shivani is talking about this in one of the, there's a book written called Reflections on Living, or Reflections in Living. It's about the stories from the people of Ananda. And what she says there is they were using the principles of energy and magnetism, that if they get this magnetism going, let's see if we can make it all work. And so $250, but then she said what happened, it became like everybody was working on this together. Everybody was tithing. That created a group magnetism. And then what happened was along came a project of planting pine trees somewhere where they were going to get paid for it. This was, I think, for some external organization. And so the whole group was involved in planting trees. They got paid money. So that's in addition to the stipend that they were getting. And so that started contributing towards the mortgage payment. And then one of the persons who then came along happened to be a builder. And he started a construction company at Ananda. And he started employing people. And he employed about 15 people or so. And so they were getting wages from it. Plus, this person's business was starting to make money. So can you see how by them putting a small amount of their own money, even though it didn't kind of initially look like very much, it all added to the magnetism, and it allowed, and something more was then able to happen, and then they were able to meet all their mortgage payments. Master has said that any work, spiritual work, altruistic work, all comes down to needing money. So, for example, you have a temple. The priest in the temple needs to be paid for. The roof needs replacing. The maintenance needs doing. The power bills need to be paid. And so, who looks after the sources of our inspiration? And so the more we can support our sources of inspiration, those sources are able to become more magnetic. And more magnetic means that that which you are enjoying from that source of inspiration is then able to reach even more people. You share with a lot more people. Now, if you're looking at 10% of a very small amount, say we looked at 50, if your income is just $50, then 10% of that is just $5. And you think, oh yeah, that's not much money. But for somebody whose only income is that 10% of that small amount is still a huge amount. Somebody who's earning huge sum of money, for them, the 10% can still feel like a lot of money because in absolute terms, it is a lot of money. And Asha tells the story. And so, no matter what you are earning, it's never going to be easy to give that 10%. Asha tells the story of a couple at Ananda who started tithing, and the first tithing check that they gave was $50 because that was what their income was, right? So I imagine $500, and the first tithing check was $50. And then some years later, the check that they wrote was $1 million. It was still only 10%, but it was $1 million. The guy was into some software or app development, something in the technology industry, and he was very creative, and that was his tithing check. Asha tells her own story that in the days, this is pre-bank account days, she says everything happened in cash. And so she used to have 2 envelopes. Whatever money she would get, she would put 10% in this envelope marked God, and 90% in the envelope that was for her. She said she never thought about it. Can I afford this? Can I not afford it? This is like my commission to God, and there's no question about it. It's a bit like, if you run your own business, and if you're GST registered, there's 15% GST. You don't get a choice whether you pay that GST or you don't pay that GST. You just put 15% aside and you pay that GST. Same thing with when you're earning wages and salaries. Your employer takes your PAYE, pay as you earn tax, before he or she or the organization even gives the money to you, right? So what is the resistance when it comes to tithing? If you are signed up for KiwiSaver, your KiwiSaver just gets deducted straight away before the money comes to you. These are things we all have to kind of come to in our own ways. Our relationship with money. What is my relationship with money? Do I think of money as a scarce resource which I have to really, keep for myself? It's like that line in the Festival of Light. What else is wisdom if not to keep what is mine for myself? And you see, we think, when we feel that we cannot give, it's because we think that I really only have one source of income. And if I give from that one source of income, and I might not have enough at the end of it. But if you can think that, money can come from anywhere. And we probably all have experienced this in our own lives, right? You may have wondered, how am I going to make this happen? And then one way or another, somehow you are able to make it happen. I mean, how does that work? Is it our doing? Or is there somebody who's watching over us to make sure that we have what we need? We say these affirmations like, I go forth in perfect faith in the power of omnipresent good to bring to me what I need when I need it. Hang on. if we don't hesitate asking God to provide for us, are we going to do anything? Are we going to do our part where we give some of what is given to us back to God? Because it's perfect reciprocity, right? We give to God and then God gives to us. I mean, in the meditation today, what we did was I said, okay, as you breathe in and do Hong, feel as you offering yourself to God. And as you breathe out, feel that you are receiving His grace. And so the same principle applies in money as well. We give to God and then God gives to us. And tithing is an act of faith. It requires faith to tithe. If 10% is too much for you, start small. Start with 5%, 2%, even 1%. So say, just in round figures, your income is $100 a week. Giving $10 is too much. Start with $1. Can I give $1? As an experiment. Because even in all the other principles, what have we said? Experiment with these principles, right? See what happens. You don't have to rush for the gold standard straight away. But make it a percentage of your income. Why make it a percentage of your income? You take the choice out for yourself. Do I want to give? Do I not want to give? How much do I want to give? Tithing is very different from donation. Donation is you've got some extra money probably left and you say, okay, I will give this. I'm choosing to give. But tithing is this percentage, whatever that percentage you've decided. Ideal is 10%, but say you've decided I'm going to give 5%. This 5% doesn't belong to me. And so I'm just going to put it in the God envelope. And just see what happens when you start tithing. And Asha was saying that when you feel that you can't afford to tithe, think in terms of, can you afford to not tithe? Because where does your money come from? In a very localized way, I was thinking, because, many times we have thought about, oh, maybe we should start a community, maybe we should get our own dedicated premises and all that. And you know what I was thinking? But actually we have done absolutely nothing to magnetize it. Have we? All we've done is wished, like lotto, that maybe one day I'll win lotto and then I'll be able to magnetize this dedicated premises for our community. But what have we done? And if we don't put effort into that which we want, do you think we'll ever magnetize it? Because everything that comes to us because of our energy that we put into it, and that energy then brings about the magnetism. This book is all about magnetism. And so one of the principles of magnetism is you've got to give. It was like it really occurred to me why nothing is happening. Because we're doing nothing about it. We have looked at this property and that property, but there has been no flow of energy that has happened. And without that flow of energy, nothing happens. Swami wrote a book of guidelines for the Sevaka order. So these are people who live in the Ananda communities. And of course, now the communities have kind of are not all residential communities, but the same sort of principles apply. And so, of course, people who live in the communities pay for, like how we have, if you live in an apartment kind of a complex, people pay body corp fees. So there's that kind of a fee that people pay. But on top of that, they also pay, as in like it's not compulsory, it's completely optional, but there's a recommended amount, that people tithe 10% of their income, because that allows the community to grow. So yeah, it's something worth thinking about and something worth doing something about. And start with something that is comfortable, but maybe just a little beyond. Asha was saying that, and she was quoting somebody else in Australia who was saying that if tithing, the amount that you tithe doesn't make you nervous, then you're not tithing enough. But we can all experiment with this. And if 1% of your income seems too much to you, then bring it down to 0.5%, But get the energy flowing. And let's see what the outcome is. I wanted to read Swami has told many stories in here about tithing. I'll tell you one and then I'll read another one. The first one is, everything that you do, offer it to God. And so he talks about writing The Art and Science of Raja Yoga. The Art and Science of Raja Yoga has got 14 chapters in it. This is the book that we use for part 2 of the Kriya Yoga course that we do here. It's got 14 chapters. Each chapter has got about 7 different sections. There's a section on philosophy, there's a section on yoga postures, diet, healing, and a few others. So quite a comprehensive book. And he said it took him 2 whole years to finish writing that book. And when he finished writing that book, he wanted to celebrate. It's always nice when you finish a project to celebrate the completion of that project. And so he thought, and he wanted to celebrate with Divine Mother, with God, because whatever he wrote flowed through that divine energy. And so he went to some holiday place, and he said it was August in America, which was the peak tourist season. And, all the rooms everywhere were fully booked, and this one place where there was a room available was very expensive. And it's almost like, should I pay this huge money for this room, or should I just go into this nearby town and stay with all the noise and everything? And so he thought, oh no, I'll just, pay and worry about where the money for food and everything comes later. So he said to the lady, I'll take this room and I want to pay for it now. And the lady said, oh no, you don't need to pay for it. And Swami said, look, I don't know if tomorrow I'll have this money or not. I might as well pay for it now. And the lady said, no, I'll treat you as I can't remember exactly what, something like a traveling salesperson, and I'll give this room to you for free. And so he didn't have to pay anything for that. And he said the next day when he went to a restaurant to eat, the owner of that place didn't charge him any money for the food either. And he says, how often has that happened to him? Just once. But it did happen. As in, he completely gave to God this work that he did, and God looked after him. And we all have these sort of stories where we were not sure how something was going to come to us, and one way or another, that need was met. As in, God is always bringing us what we need. When you're self-employed, you notice it more, that every time, there is a sale that happens, it's like, thank you, God. Because it's not a fixed sum of money that's coming to you each week or each fortnight. And so it almost becomes like a habit. Well, I know for me, it's just become something that each time there's, somebody buys a service, somebody pays for a course or something, it's like, thank you, God, that this money has come to me, because really, it's God bringing you the money. And sometimes I've thought, I wonder how this month will go, and, something or the other that I wasn't expecting. Somebody would buy an 8-week course, or somebody wants to come for a 5-day retreat. It just kind of happens. And so the natural thing then to do is to give God his fair share. I wanted to read a story that Swami talks about, and this story is a story that Rabindranath Tagore, I think that's the name. Let me just find it. Yeah, so this comes from Rabindranath Tagore. He had written a poem. And are you all familiar with Rabindranath Tagore? He, that chant, "In my house with thine own hands light the lamp of thy love"? He actually wrote that. He was a very good poet. He's known for he's known for literature and poetry and all that. And there's a chapter, by the way, in the autobiography of a yogi where Paramahansa Yogananda goes and meets Rabindranath Tagore. You've forgotten? Oh well, you'll just have to read it again. Swami has quoted the poem. "I had gone a-begging from door to door in the village path when the golden chariot appeared in the distance like a gorgeous dream, and I wondered who was this king of all kings. My hopes rose high, and methought my evil days were at an end, and I stood waiting for alms to be given, unasked, and for wealth scattered on all sides in the dust. The chariot stopped where I stood. Thy glance fell on me, and thou camest down with a smile. I felt that the luck of my life had come at last. Then of a sudden thou didst hold out thy right hand and say, What hast thou to give me? Ah, what a kingly jest was it to open thy palm to a beggar to beg. I was confused and stood undecided, and then from my wallet I slowly took out the least little grain of corn and gave it to thee. But how great was my surprise when at the day's end I emptied my bag on the floor to find a least little grain of gold among the poor heap. I bitterly wept and wished that I had the heart to give thee my all. So that which we give to God comes back to us, in much, much bigger ways. But we need the courage to tithe. In the society that we live in, as in the modern society that we live in, we think that becoming a disciple of a guru takes courage, because we think that, I don't think I need a guru, I can do it all by myself. But tithing is even harder. It takes even more courage to tithe than any other spiritual practice. We all have our own personal relationships with money. Do we think of money as an abundant source, or do we think of it as a scarce source? Do we think that my ability to earn comes from me, or do we think that my ability to earn comes from God? I mean, ultimately, that's what it boils down to. And if at the end of it all, things don't quite go in the way that, we expect it to go, then really maybe even that is God's will. There's something in it for us to learn. And if we are afraid to tithe, well, there's obviously some karma there, right? Otherwise we won't be afraid. Whatever we are afraid of, we know that there's some karma there that needs to be resolved. If you're afraid that you may not have food to eat, there's karma there that you've got that needs to be resolved. That means that, have you not got enough faith that you'll have food to eat? I happened to watch a video about food shortages. There's a huge talk about food shortages that may be looming on the horizon. And I love reading people's comments, largely because it gives me an idea of what is the mass consciousness out there on this topic. And one of the comments that I really liked, this person was saying, start eating less, get used to eating less, stop snacking, and you'll find that if it does happen that there is a food shortage, and if you are used to, surviving on little food, it would be no big deal. It's not something that you're going to be afraid about. And so, same thing with money, like when you have more money, you can spend more money. When you have little money, then you spend little money. It's like whatever God gives me, there is something in it for me to learn. As in, that is the precious gift that God is giving me, because it allows me to transcend my karma, transcend my limitations. So, any questions or thoughts about this subject?